Few topics spark as much curiosity and at the same time as much fear as the mystery of what happens after death. That final frontier, that territory unexplored by most of the living, remains one of the biggest unknowns in human existence. But what if I told you we have access to some extraordinary knowledge about this invisible realm? A knowledge that was kept away from the public for so long and is now resurfacing to bring not only understanding but also deep comfort for those who fear this inevitable transition. If this topic resonates with you, if you've lost someone dear, or if you worry about your own final journey, take a moment right now to give this a like and subscribe to the channel. What I'm about to share over the next few minutes might completely change your outlook on death and, more importantly, on how to live the rest of your days. In 1944, an ordinary-looking man with a calm demeanor lay down on a couch, closed his eyes, and just like he had done thousands of times before, entered a deep trance state. This man was Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, perhaps the most documented and astonishing medium of the 20th century. What few people know is that on that very day, a rare session was recorded in which Cayce described, in impressive detail, the journey of the human soul after disconnecting from the physical body. This recording, practically forgotten for years in dusty files at the Foundation for Research and Enlightenment, was recently rediscovered and transcribed. What makes this account so extraordinary isn't just the source. Cayce gave over 14,000 documented psychic readings that defied conventional explanation, but the calmness and consistency with which he describes what many fear is the absolute end. In his characteristically gentle voice, Cayce revealed death isn't the end, but a conscious transition. There's no moment of emptiness or darkness. The consciousness remains intact, continuous, and even expanded. This revelation is a dramatic contrast to our deepest fears. The fear of total annihilation, of being forgotten, of being permanently separated from those we love. According to Cayce's visions, none of those fears actually materialize in the reality after death. Many older people who have learned about this account say they felt immediate relief, as if a decades-old weight had been lifted off their shoulders. For those facing the approach of this transition or carrying the grief of a recent loss, Cayce's words offer a radically different and comforting perspective. So what exactly happens in the first moments after the physical shutdown of the body? Cayce describes a surprisingly calm and familiar process. It's like waking up from a deep sleep, but with extraordinary clarity and lucidity, he explains. You're aware that you still exist, still being you, but free from the limitations and pains of your physical body. This initial phase of the transition is marked by a feeling of lightness and expansion. Many people report a panoramic perspective, as if they could watch their body and the events around them from a higher vantage point. The senses don't diminish, they expand. Colors seem more vibrant, sounds clearer, and there's an intuitive understanding of the environment that goes beyond our 5 physical senses. Cayce emphasizes one crucial detail that brings immense comfort. We're not alone at that moment. There is always companionship and assistance, he says. Beings of light, often recognized as beloved ones who passed on earlier, or spiritual guides with whom we have a connection, appear to guide and welcome us. This reunion is described as one of the most moving moments of the transition, the realization that the bonds we value were never truly broken, only temporarily hidden by the limits of physical perception. It is in this initial phase of the transition that many experience the well-known tunnel of light, often reported in near-death experiences. However, Cayce offers a more nuanced take. The tunnel, he explains, is a manifestation of the transitioning consciousness, a kind of energetic passage formed by the very vibration of the soul moving into higher dimensions of existence. This passage isn't imposed externally, it is generated by the natural movement of a consciousness freed from physical ties. What many don't understand, and what Cayce makes strikingly clear, is that each person experiences a unique transition, colored by their own beliefs, expectations, and spiritual state. The mind keeps creating reality, even after the body shuts down, notes Cayce. That which we deeply believe in shapes our initial experience. This insight explains why different religious traditions describe the afterlife in such varied ways. Each description reflects an experiential truth filtered through different belief systems. For those who have lived in fear of divine judgment or eternal punishment, Casey's words bring a liberating perspective. There isn't a fixed heaven or hell, he explains, but rather states of consciousness created by our own actions, thoughts, and level of spiritual development. What many traditions call judgment is in fact a natural process of self-review, where the soul, now clearer and undistracted by material life, reflects on the meaning and impact of its earthly journey. Case describes this life review phase in fascinating detail. The soul goes through every significant moment again, but with one crucial difference, he explains. Now we feel not only our own emotions, but the full impact of our actions on others. This process isn't meant to punish or reward, but to bring understanding and growth. It's like a perfectly honest mirror that shows not only what we did, but who we became throughout our earthly journey. The most surprising aspect of this review, according to Case, is its non-judgmental nature. There is no external condemnation, he stresses. There's only clarity, only truth. The absence of punitive judgment stands in stark contrast to many traditional religious views and offers tremendous relief to those burdened by guilt or regret. The review is not meant to punish but to illuminate, to show the soul its true reflection, and provide the understanding needed to evolve. It is precisely this evolution that marks the next stage on the post-death journey. After the review, Case explains, the soul naturally moves to the vibrational level that corresponds to its development. This movement isn't forced as a sentence. It happens naturally, like water seeking its own level. Souls with similar vibrations find themselves in realms of similar experiences, forming communities based on spiritual affinity rather than earthly family ties or social bonds. At this point in the journey, Case reveals something many find deeply comforting. No one is abandoned. Even souls residing in the densest and most challenging layers of existence receive constant assistance and opportunities for growth and elevation, he explains. There isn't eternal damnation or permanent separation from the divine source. There is only the everlasting invitation to evolve, to expand consciousness, and to awaken to broader realities of love and unity. Given these revelations, it's not surprising that so many studying Casey's teachings on death find not only solace but also a profound transformation in the way they view life. When we realize that death isn't an abyss but a bridge, not an end but a portal, not a punishment but a natural transition, our relationship with the time we have left fundamentally changes. For older folks, these insights from Case carry an especially deep meaning. Those who sense the nearness of this transition often report that after learning this perspective, they experience a notable decrease in anxiety. It's like finally being able to put down a burden I'd carried for decades, shared an 87-year-old woman after hearing these descriptions. For the first time, I see death not as a sentence, but as a graduation. This relief from fear has impressive real-world consequences. Recent studies in transpersonal psychology show that people who adopt a broader view on the continuity of consciousness tend to enjoy a significantly better quality of life in their later years. They exhibit greater calm, fewer depressive symptoms, and, surprisingly, report a blossoming of creativity and purpose that many thought they had lost. Case himself stressed that understanding the transient nature of death should transform how we approach life. If we fully understood the continuity of consciousness, he noted, we'd live with far more intention, presence, and compassion. In his readings, he often advised his clients not to delay spiritual growth or the resolution of emotional issues, knowing that those very issues would eventually have to be confronted during the post-death review. This advice becomes especially relevant for those of us in the so-called golden years of our lives. According to Case, this period represents a precious opportunity for conscious integration and preparation. The final years of physical life, he explained, offer a unique window for resolution, forgiveness, and deeper understanding before the transition. Far from being years of decline, they can be a time of a profound spiritual harvest. So how can we apply these revelations practically in our own lives, especially if we're approaching our later years? Case offers surprisingly simple and straightforward guidance. Cultivating serenity, inner honesty, and unconditional love, he suggests, is the best possible preparation for a harmonious transition. These qualities not only enrich the rest of our days, but also make the process of disconnecting and transitioning much easier when the time comes. Equally important is resolving emotional unfinished business. Unspoken words, withheld forgiveness, and unresolved relationships, Case warned, can anchor the consciousness even after the transition, creating attachments that hinder the soul's natural movement. That's why many who study his teachings adopt practices of forgiveness, reconciliation, and authentic expression as part of consciously preparing for the transition. Another fascinating aspect of Case's revelations relates to communication between dimensions. Contrary to the popular belief that there is an insurmountable barrier between the living and the dead, Case suggests that communication is not only possible, but happens far more frequently than we realize. Those who have passed on remain aware of the living and often try to offer comfort, guidance, and help, he stated. The barrier doesn't lie in their ability to reach us, but in our limited receptivity. This perspective resonates deeply with many who have felt the inexplicable presence of a lost loved one, received significant signs after a loss, or experienced vivid dreams of reunion. Far from being mere psychological consolations or coincidences, Case suggests that these are often genuine contacts, temporary bridges between dimensions of consciousness that normally don't intersect in our ordinary perception. Particularly around the moments close to death and immediately after passing, communication between dimensions becomes more fluid. There's a window, Casey explains, where the transitioning consciousness can move quite freely among realities, often visiting loved ones to offer comfort or farewells. Numerous accounts from end-of-life experiences where those nearing the end describe visits from deceased relatives support this view. For those of us still living, Case offers advice on how to become more open to these subtle communications. The analytical mind and fear block our perception of these broader realities, he observes. Meditation, inner quiet, and an open heart create the conditions for transpersonal communication to occur naturally. It doesn't involve developing extraordinary psychic abilities. It's simply about removing the obstacles that our materialistic culture has put up against these natural forms of communication. It's remarkable how this cross-cultural view of the after-death journey provides common ground for various spiritual traditions. The stages described by Case have parallels in the Tibetan Buddhist depiction of the bardo, in Spiritism's post-death realms, in the life review concepts in shamanic traditions, and even with different interpretations in the notions of judgment and paradise in Abrahamic religions. This convergence suggests that despite theological differences, there's a shared human experience of transition that transcends cultures. Perhaps the most groundbreaking part of Case's revelations is his description of the ultimate purpose behind the post-death journey. The transition isn't an end in itself, he emphasizes, but a gateway to continuous growth and expanding consciousness. Instead of a static paradise where souls remain in unchanging bliss forever, Case describes the post-physical existence as dynamically evolving, offering infinite opportunities for learning, service, and development. This understanding completely transforms our relationship with the remaining time we have. If death isn't the end but a portal, if consciousness continues its journey of expansion, if relationships and connections persist beyond physical separation, then every moment we live gains a meaning that goes far beyond the immediate. Our choices, our personal growth, our relationships, everything becomes not just our current life, but the foundation for our future experience. For seniors, this knowledge offers an extraordinary psychological and spiritual reorientation. Rather than seeing the final years as a time of loss and decline, they can recognize them as a precious phase of conscious preparation, integration, and gradual transition. The last physical years are a gift, Case suggests, a time when the soul naturally begins to let go of the material and reconnect with its larger dimensions. This perspective is echoed in countless accounts from people in the twilight of their lives who, even without prior knowledge of these ideas, spontaneously describe visions, dreams, and expanded perceptions that seem to pave the way for the transition. Many report encounters with deceased loved ones, views of luminous landscapes, or a growing feeling of peace and detachment that emerges naturally, experiences that make perfect sense within the context Case describes. And for those of us who support loved ones in their final moments, these revelations provide a valuable roadmap for offering the best possible care. By understanding the nature of the transition, we can create environments that ease, rather than hinder, this natural process. A loving presence, an explicit permission to leave when ready, and a verbal acknowledgement that the journey continues, Case teaches, are the greatest gifts we can offer someone in transition. Maybe you're watching this video out of intellectual curiosity, or perhaps you're seeking comfort while grieving a loved one. Maybe you yourself are growing older and contemplating your own mortality with a mix of apprehension and curiosity. No matter what your situation is, consider this. What if death is really just a transition? And what if everything Case saw during his astonishing states of expanded consciousness is true? If you found value in these reflections, please give this a like and share the video with someone who might benefit from this comforting perspective. Also, feel free to leave your own experiences, questions, or insights about this deep subject in the comments. Our channel keeps exploring these frontiers of human consciousness, and we'd love for you to join the community by subscribing and turning on the notifications. As we wrap up this reflection, remember Casey's final words about the great transition. Death isn't a door that closes, it's one that opens. It isn't a goodbye, but a see you later in a broader dimension. It isn't about extinguishing the light, but about turning off the lamp, because the dawn has arrived. When we truly understand this, life takes on a new meaning, and death loses its terrible hold on our inner peace. As Case often reminded his clients, death is just a bridge between states of consciousness, not an abyss. And like any bridge, it wasn't built to stand on forever, but to be crossed with confidence when the time is right. May this understanding bring peace to your heart and a new sense of purpose to your days, no matter where you are on your own journey.